It is textbook domestic violent radicalization. A figure with maximum street cred with extremists, stokes fear based on racial stereotypes, accuses marginalized populations of being, quote, terrorists, fetishizes the Second Amendment, and then tosses in the lit match of even more incendiary rhetorical bombs. And we are exactly where we find ourselves at this hour today. Uncharted territory. As we have covered extensively on this program, there's been a clear escalation in the specificity and repetition of Donald Trump's violent rhetoric in recent days. Donald Trump has called for the country's top military official to be executed. Donald Trump has targeted a court clerk with a baseless smear that led to a gag order. He has repeatedly gone after the prosecutors who have charged him with 91 felony counts in total. And now there's an attack on migrants that has echoes to white supremacist rhetoric. On this program, we try our hardest not to ever amplify his most dangerous comments. But we're going to play them for you here today, right now, because we believe you should hear the comments from the man himself.
Nobody has any idea where these people are coming from, and we know they come from prisons. We know they come from mental institutions, insane asylums. We know they're terrorists. Nobody has ever seen anything like we're witnessing right now. It is a very sad thing for our country. It's poisoning the blood of our country.
It's poisoning the blood of our country. So much to say, right? But what makes these comments even more dangerous is the fact that Trump's rhetoric and his ideas, we know by now what happens to them. They seep into the fabric of a large swath of our country, largely people who identify as Republicans. Ideas that used to be unspeakable and unthinkable become acceptable, even party dogma. New York Times reports this, quote, the first time Trump talked privately about shooting missiles into Mexico to take out drug labs, as far as his former aides can recall, was early 2020. And the first time those comments became public was when his second defense secretary, Mark Esper, wrote in his memoir that Trump had raised it with him and asked if the U.S. could make it look as if some other country was responsible. Esper portrayed the idea as ludicrous. Yet instead of condemning the idea, some Republicans publicly welcomed word that Trump had wanted to use military force against the drug cartels on Mexican soil and without the consent of Mexico's government. Trump's notion of a military intervention south of the border has swiftly evolved from an Oval Office fantasy to something approaching Republican Party doctrine. And as we all know all too well, given the events of January 6th, when a mob of Trump supporters believing Trump's lies about the U.S. election results stormed the Capitol, the impact of Trump's rhetoric is easily seen on the streets. New York Times reports this on anti-migrant protests that took place in New York City last month, quote, the loudspeaker on a quiet Staten Island street blasted demands at 117 decibels, louder than a dog barking in your ear, pointed at a school that is sheltering some of the 110,000 migrants who have arrived in New York City over the last year and a half. The message could not have been more unwelcoming. Quote, immigrants are not safe here. Signs reading "Protect Our Children" were nailed to utility poles. Protesters wore shirts emblazoned with American flags and images of former President Donald Trump's face. Deeply dangerous, racist attack on migrants by an ex-president with a history of fomenting violence in America is where we start today. With me at the table, former acting Assistant Attorney General for National Security at the U.S. Department of Justice, Mary McCord, is here. Plus, former top State Department official during the Obama administration, Rick Stengel's here. Also joining us, Princeton University professor and distinguished political scholar, our friend Eddie Glaude's here. And the CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt, is back. Jonathan, I want to start with you. I want to read you something that our friends over at Maddow blog have reported. This is from Laura Barron Lopez, a White House correspondent for PBS, who told her viewers last night, quote, I checked with a historian, Ruth Ben-Gayat, and she said that language that he's using echoes language used in Nazi propaganda by Adolf Hitler when Adolf Hitler actually said that Jewish people and migrants were, quote, causing a blood poisoning of Germany. Your reaction to Trump's comments?
Well, in some ways, it feels like there we go again, Nicole. I mean, to be frank, I don't know how much Donald Trump is a student of history or if he even reads books and what's on his nightstand. But I do know, as the reporter said last night on PBS NewsHour, that the language that he used in that interview is the same or intended to evoke the kind of language that's been used by many who hold vicious anti-immigrant, racist, anti-Semitic views like Hitler. And I'm sure other nativist world leaders. And the way that phrase was inserted into this sort of crazy claims he was making that are totally untrue leads me to believe that someone gave him that line. And we have seen over the years how Trump uses racist, hateful, despicable language and how it evokes violence. Think about 2019 and the claims about an invasion from Mexico that led a man to go to the Walmart in El Paso and murder dozens of people because they appeared to be from Mexico. Or think about his evocation, the Great Replacement Theory, that led a man in 2018 in October to the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh and murdered Jewish people while they were worshiping. Violent rhetoric leads to violent actions. And so this isn't dangerous, it's explosive. And it's like lighting a fuse and just waiting for the bomb to go off. So we at ADL are deeply alarmed because whether you're the President of the United States or a member of Congress or a pundit, words matter. And when you are the de facto nominee for one of the two major political parties in this country, you have a special responsibility. And it's long overdue for Citizen Trump, candidate Trump, President Trump to stop once and for all before more people get hurt.
Jonathan, do you think there's any chance he will?
No, I don't. And that's the real problem here.
So what do we do?
We need responsible parties around the president to finally say enough. Like, how do you put someone in place when they're using the kind of language that again and again and again has gotten people killed? I mean, we need a kind of accountability among those, you know, the kingmakers, if you will, in the Republican Party to just say, time out, pull the emergency brake. We can't go through this again. The country can't afford it. Marginalized communities can't afford it. None of us can.
I mean, Jonathan, I guess I worry that we are failing to imagine that this is his intent. I mean, you just said responsible people around Donald Trump. Who would that be? I mean, there aren't any, and that's by his design. He's a candidate for president. He could have anyone he wanted around him, and the people that are around him are the people he wants around him. I mean, if this is the design, then what should we do?
Look, this is a conundrum, but like my job at ADL is to keep people safe. So I can't necessarily, tell the GOP what to do. But I'm talking to Jewish people every day. We just co-chaired the March on Washington with 155,000 people, lots of African Americans. Whether you're an HBCU or a black church or a synagogue or a Chinese American community center, people are afraid. Their anxiety levels are reaching a breaking point. And so when you ask me who are the responsible people, President Obama used to say, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So the way I see it, we have just got to put on the storm windows, if you will, batten down the hatches, because I can't afford to wait in some abstract way. I've got to make sure I'm keeping people safe right now.
Eddie Glaude, I pressed Jonathan in that way, not because I think there's an answer that someone can produce, right, that satisfies what he accurately describes as really a conundrum, a challenge of our times, but because I worry that he's revealed himself over and over and over again. If he is reelected, he will take away this network's media licenses. He's gone after Comcast. If he is elected, he will prosecute General Mark Milley for treason, a crime punishable by death. If he's reelected, he will pardon the hundreds of insurrectionists who have been prosecuted and convicted by juries of their peers. If he is reelected, he has told us what he will do. And my concern today is about the rest of us. What should the rest of us be doing?
Well, we have to do exactly what you're doing right now, and that is foreground what he said. He is who he is. We have to We can't just simply do it at, it can't be on page, the fold of the, right? It has to be the headline, the lead story in this instance. We have to tell the truth about what he intends to do. And we have to understand that what you said in the introduction, Nicole, is really important. It has infected the Republican Party. And this is, and I think there's another element to this, and I don't know what you think about this, but because Republicans are at the center of gravity of our politics, they define the frame of the debate. When they get infected with this stuff, we all do. And so you see President Biden just announcing, right, that they're going to build some wall, right? Because the terms have shifted, right? And so I think it's important for us to foreground this as deliberately and as effectively and in every chance we get. Because if we don't, he's going to end up in the White House and communities are going to be in danger at even a higher level,